Captain James Mitchell, a 42-year-old military prosecutor at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, discovers evidence that could exonerate a young soldier sentenced to life imprisonment for a crime he didn't commit. As Mitchell digs deeper, he uncovers a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of military command, forcing him to choose between his career and justice. His decision to speak one sentence in court will not only free an innocent man but expose systemic corruption that will forever change military justice procedures across the United States Armed Forces. The Forgotten File. The September rain hammered against the windows of the Judge Advocate General's office at Fort Bragg, creating a rhythmic percussion that had become the soundtrack to Captain James Mitchell's late nights. At 11:47 p.m., he was alone in the building, surrounded by towers of case files that seemed to multiply with each passing week. James rubbed his tired eyes, the fluorescent lights above casting harsh shadows across his weathered face. At 42, he'd spent nearly 2 decades in military law, and the weight of those years showed in the gray threading through his close-cropped hair and the permanent crease between his eyebrows. His uniform jacket hung on the back of his chair, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows as he worked through the backlog. Just 3 more files, he muttered to himself, reaching for his 4th cup of coffee. The liquid had gone cold hours ago, but he drank it anyway. The next file he pulled was thin, surprisingly so. The label read, Private First Class Marcus Webb, Court-Martial Appeal, Denied. James frowned. Appeal files were usually thick with documentation, legal briefs, and evidence reviews. This one felt like it contained maybe 30 pages at most. He opened it, expecting a straightforward case. What he found made him sit up straighter. Private Marcus Webb, 23 years old, had been convicted of assaulting a superior officer and stealing classified documents from a secure facility at Fort Bragg. The sentence, life imprisonment at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. The trial had taken place 3 years ago, and Webb's appeal had been denied 18 months later. James flipped through the pages, his prosecutor's instincts immediately sensing something off. The trial transcript was remarkably brief, only 2 days of testimony. For a case involving classified documents and assault, that was unusually quick. The evidence presented seemed almost perfunctory: testimony from the assaulted officer, Major Richard Halloway, security footage that allegedly showed Webb entering the secure facility, and witness statements from 2 other soldiers. But it was what wasn't in the file that caught James's attention. There was no forensic report on the assault. No detailed analysis of the security footage. No cross-examination worth mentioning. Webb's defense attorney, a Captain Norton who'd since retired, seemed to have put up barely any fight at all. James pulled out his laptop and began searching the military legal database. Captain Norton had handled 17 cases during his final 2 years before retirement. 15 had resulted in convictions. Nothing unusual there, military prosecutors won most of their cases. But when James dug deeper, he found something interesting. Norton had requested early retirement just 2 weeks after Webb's trial concluded, and he'd left the military with a substantial bonus for exemplary service. That's odd, James said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty office. He looked at Webb's photograph in the file. A young black man with intelligent eyes and a slight smile stared back at him. According to his service record, Webb had enlisted at 19, right out of high school in Detroit, Michigan. He'd scored exceptionally high on his aptitude tests and had been fast-tracked into intelligence analysis. His performance reviews were stellar, until the incident. James checked his watch, 12:23 a.m. He should go home. His wife, Sandra, would be asleep by now, and his daughter Emily had a soccer game in the morning that he'd already missed practice for twice this week. But something about this file wouldn't let him close it. He pulled out his phone and called the archive office. It rang 6 times before a drowsy voice answered. Archives, Sergeant Peters speaking. Peters, it's Captain Mitchell. I need you to pull everything you have on a case from 3 years ago. Private First Class Marcus Webb. Captain, it's after midnight. Can this wait until? No, it can't. Webb is serving life at Leavenworth, and his appeal file is thinner than a parking ticket. Something's wrong here. There was a pause, then the sound of shuffling. Webb, let me check. Okay, I see it in the system. Captain, that file is flagged. James felt his stomach tighten. Flagged how? Restricted access. You need authorization from a full colonel or above to view the complete file. Why would an enlisted soldier's court-martial be restricted? I don't know, sir. But according to this, the restriction was put in place by order of Colonel Vincent Hardwick, immediately following the conclusion of the appeal. Colonel Hardwick. James knew that name. Vincent Hardwick was the staff judge advocate for the entire base, the senior legal advisor to the commanding general. He was also known for being fiercely protective of the military's reputation and had a track record of crushing anyone who challenged his authority. Thanks, Peters. Go back to sleep. James ended the call and sat in silence, listening to the rain. A restricted file. A suspiciously thin appeal. A defense attorney who retired early with a bonus. And a young soldier serving life in prison. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a photograph. It showed him at his change of command ceremony, newly promoted to captain, standing beside his mentor, Major General Richard Thornton. The general had since retired, but he told James something that day that had stuck with him: the law is only just if we have the courage to apply it equally, regardless of rank or consequence. James looked back at Webb's photograph. The young man would be 26 now, 3 years into a life sentence. If he was innocent. Don't jump to conclusions, James told himself. You don't know anything yet. But his instincts, honed by 18 years of military law, told him otherwise. The next morning, James arrived at his office at 0630 hours, earlier than usual. The rain had stopped, but thick clouds still hung over Fort Bragg, casting everything in shades of gray. He'd managed 3 hours of sleep and had left home before Sandra or Emily woke up, leaving a note apologizing for missing another breakfast. His first call was to Major Lisa Rodriguez, a fellow JAG officer and one of the few people at Fort Bragg he trusted completely. They'd gone through training together at the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School in Charlottesville, Virginia, and had maintained their friendship through multiple deployments. Lisa, I need your eyes on something. Can you come to my office? Now. I haven't even had coffee yet, James. Bring coffee. Trust me, you'll want to be awake for this. 20 minutes later, Lisa sat across from his desk, her dark eyes scanning the Webb file. At 38, she was sharp, analytical, and had a reputation for finding holes in cases that others missed. She'd turned down multiple promotions to stay in trial work, which told James everything he needed to know about her priorities. This is thin, she said finally, echoing his own assessment. Way too thin for a case this serious. Keep reading. Look at the defense strategy. Lisa flipped through the pages, her frown deepening. There isn't one. Norton basically conceded everything. He called no witnesses, presented no alternative theory, didn't challenge the security footage. She looked up. James, this is either the worst defense I've ever seen, or it's deliberate. Norton retired 2 weeks after the trial with a bonus. You think he was paid off? I think something's not right. And the complete file is restricted. I can't access it without Colonel Hardwick's authorization. Lisa closed the folder and leaned back, her expression troubled. Hardwick is protective of his cases. If there's something wrong here and he's involved, going after this could destroy your career. I know. You've got a family, James. Emily's what, 12 now? College isn't that far off. Sandra's finally settled after your last reassignment. Is this really the hill you want to die on? James was quiet for a moment, watching the morning sun finally break through the clouds outside his window. 3 years ago, we sent a 23-year-old kid to prison for life. If we got it wrong, he's lost 3 years he'll never get back. Every day we don't fix it, he loses another one. Lisa studied him, then nodded slowly. Okay. What do you need? I need to talk to Webb. And I need to see that security footage. The footage will be in evidence storage. But Webb is at Leavenworth, that's 1,000 miles away in Kansas. You can't just drive up there for a chat with a convicted prisoner. I can if it's part of a case review. I'll submit a request for a routine audit of the conviction. It's within my authority as a prosecutor to review closed cases for training purposes. Hardwick will ask questions. Then I'll have to have good answers. Lisa stood, picking up the file. I'll make a copy of this before you submit anything. Just in case things get complicated. They will, James said quietly. They always do. That afternoon, James submitted his request for a case review, carefully wording it as part of a broader examination of trial procedures for training purposes. He included Webb's case among 3 others, hoping to avoid drawing too much attention. The request went to Colonel Hardwick's office for approval. While he waited, James began his own investigation. He pulled up the security footage from the night of the alleged theft. The video quality was poor, showing a figure in military fatigues entering the secure facility around 2,300 hours. The face was partially obscured by shadows and the angle of the camera. The figure moved quickly, entering the building and emerging 17 minutes later carrying what appeared to be a document folder. James played it again, slower this time, studying every detail. The person's build was similar to Webb's, and the gait could match, but there was nothing definitive. In a court of law, this footage alone shouldn't have been enough for a conviction, not without corroborating evidence. He pulled up the assault report next. Major Richard Halloway had testified that Webb attacked him in a parking lot outside the officers' club, striking him multiple times before fleeing. Halloway had suffered a concussion, broken nose, and fractured cheekbone. Medical records confirmed his injuries. But when James looked at Webb's record, he found something interesting. Webb weighed 165 pounds and stood 5'9". He had no documented history of violence or disciplinary issues. Major Halloway, on the other hand, was 6'2", 210 pounds, and had been a collegiate boxer at West Point. How does a 165-pound intelligence analyst beat up a trained boxer who outweighs him by 45 pounds? James wondered aloud. His phone buzzed. A text from Lisa, evidence room. Now. Found something. James grabbed his uniform jacket and headed down 3 floors to the evidence storage facility. Lisa met him at the entrance, her face pale. What is it? I pulled the physical evidence from Webb's case. The document folder he allegedly stole. It's here, but James, it's empty. Empty. Completely empty. And according to the chain of custody, it was empty when it was logged into evidence. No classified documents were ever inside it. James felt his pulse quicken. That's impossible. The conviction was based on stealing classified documents. You can't convict someone of stealing documents that don't exist. Look at this. Lisa handed him an evidence log. The folder was photographed when it was admitted as evidence. See the timestamp? The photos were taken by Sergeant Paul Vickers, the evidence custodian at the time. He retired 6 months after the trial. Let me guess, with a bonus? Lisa nodded grimly. Full pension, plus an exemplary service award. James's mind raced. A defense attorney who didn't defend. An evidence custodian who retired early. An empty folder that supposedly contained classified documents. And now, a case file locked behind restrictions that required high-level authorization. Someone set Webb up, he said quietly. Someone with enough authority to manipulate evidence, pay off key players, and lock down the file afterward. James, if you're right about this, we're talking about conspiracy to commit fraud, wrongful conviction, and abuse of power. This goes way beyond one corrupt officer. This is systemic. I know. Which is why I need to talk to Webb. I need to hear his side of the story before we go any further. Your request to visit Leavenworth will probably be denied by Hardwick. So I need to go over his head. Lisa grabbed his arm. James, think about what you're doing. Going over Hardwick's head means involving the commanding general. If you're wrong, your career is over. If you're right. She paused, choosing her words carefully. If you're right, you're about to expose a conspiracy that could reach the highest levels of command. People will fight back. Hard. James looked at the evidence folder in his hands, empty, just like the case against Marcus Webb should have been from the start. Then I'd better make sure I'm right. That evening, James sat in his home office in the small house on the edge of Fort Bragg, staring at his computer screen. Sandra had taken Emily to her soccer game, giving him a disappointed look that said more than words could about his absence. He'd promised to make the next one, but they both knew he probably wouldn't. He drafted an email to Major General Patricia Lawson, the commanding general of Fort Bragg. Lawson was known for being fair but demanding, and she had a reputation for not tolerating incompetence or corruption. If anyone would support his investigation, it would be her. General Lawson. I am writing to request your support for a critical case review. I have discovered significant irregularities in the court-martial of PFC Marcus Webb, who is currently serving a life sentence at USDB Leavenworth for assault and theft of classified documents. Preliminary investigation has revealed the following concerns. 1. The physical evidence, document folder, logged in the case is empty and contains no classified documents. 2. The security footage used to identify Webb is inconclusive. 3. The defense provided was insufficient to the point of potential malpractice. 4. Key personnel involved in the case received early retirements with bonuses shortly after the trial. 5. The complete case file has been restricted without clear justification. I believe there is sufficient cause to reopen this case and conduct a thorough investigation. I request authorization to interview PFC Webb at Fort Leavenworth and access to all restricted files related to his conviction. Respectfully, Captain James Mitchell, Staff Judge Advocate Office. His finger hovered over the send button. Once he sent this, there was no going back. Hardwick would know he'd gone around him. The investigation would become official. And if he was wrong about any of this, his career, everything he'd built over 18 years, would be finished. He thought about Marcus Webb, 26 years old, sitting in a cell at Leavenworth for a crime he possibly didn't commit. 3 years stolen. A lifetime stretching ahead behind bars. James clicked send. The response came faster than he expected. At 0820 hours the next morning, his phone rang. The caller ID showed General Lawson's office. Captain Mitchell, General Lawson's office. The general wants to see you at 0900 hours. Her office. I'll be there. Captain. Come prepared to defend everything in your email. The general doesn't appreciate having her time wasted. Understood. James hung up and immediately called Lisa. It's happening. Lawson wants to see me in 40 minutes. Already? That's fast. Be careful, James. Lawson doesn't get involved in cases like this unless she thinks there's something real. Or unless she wants to shut it down personally. That too. At 0855 hours, James stood outside General Lawson's office in the main headquarters building. Through the window, he could see Colonel Hardwick inside, speaking with the general. Hardwick's face was red, his gestures animated. He was clearly angry. The door opened, and Hardwick emerged, his eyes locking onto James with undisguised hostility. Captain Mitchell. How nice of you to go around the chain of command. His voice was cold, controlled rage. When this is over, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about military protocol. Sir, Save it. The general wants to see you now. Hardwick brushed past him, and James entered the office. General Patricia Lawson sat behind her desk, a woman in her mid-50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her office walls were covered with commendations, photographs from multiple deployments, and a shadow box containing her medals from 30 years of service. "Sit down, Captain." James sat, his spine straight, hands on his knees. Lawson studied him for a long moment. "I've been reading about you, Mitchell. 18 years of service. Clean record. Strong performance reviews. 2 Bronze Stars from your deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. You're on track for a promotion to major within the next 18 months. Yes, ma'am. And you're willing to throw that all away for a convicted felon? I'm willing to do my job, ma'am. Which is to ensure justice is served." Justice was served. PFC Webb was tried, convicted, and his appeal was denied. The system worked. With respect, General, I don't believe it did. The evidence doesn't support the conviction. Lawson leaned back in her chair. "Colonel Hardwick tells me you're on a witch hunt. That you're seeing conspiracies where there are none. He says the Webb case was straightforward, and that you're wasting valuable time and resources on a closed matter. General, the document folder that Webb allegedly stole is empty. There are no classified documents. You can't convict someone of theft when nothing was stolen. The documents could have been removed after seizure. Then why isn't that documented? And why would the defense attorney not challenge an empty folder as evidence? Why would he put up virtually no defense at all and then retire with a bonus 2 weeks later?" Lawson was silent, her expression unreadable. "General, I'm not on a witch hunt. I'm following the evidence. And right now, the evidence suggests that Marcus Webb was framed for a crime he didn't commit. If I'm wrong, then a routine review will confirm the conviction was just. But if I'm right..." He paused. "If I'm right, then we've imprisoned an innocent man and allowed the real perpetrators to walk free. And you think those perpetrators are members of the military command? I think someone with significant authority orchestrated this. The question is why?" Lawson stood and walked to her window, looking out over the sprawling base. "You understand what you're asking me to do, Captain? You're asking me to authorize an investigation that could implicate senior officers. You're asking me to potentially expose corruption in my own command. The fallout from something like this could be catastrophic." "Yes, ma'am. I understand that." She turned back to face him. "Colonel Hardwick wants me to deny your request and reassign you to administrative duties pending a review of your conduct. He's within his rights to request that." James felt his heart sink but kept his face neutral. "I understand, General. However," Lawson continued, walking back to her desk, "I didn't get to where I am by ignoring red flags. I've reviewed the summary you sent, and I agree that there are troubling irregularities." She pulled out a folder. "Your request to visit Fort Leavenworth is approved. You have 1 week. Interview Webb, review any additional evidence, and report back to me directly. Not to Hardwick. To me." James felt a surge of relief. "Thank you, General. Don't thank me yet. If you're wrong about this, Captain, your career is finished. And if you're right..." She paused, her eyes hard. "If you're right, this will get very ugly, very quickly. People will try to stop you. They'll discredit you, intimidate you, and if that doesn't work, they'll destroy you. Are you prepared for that?"